So the SALT cap, state and local tax deduction. So since 2017, there's been a SALT cap that you can't deduct beyond $10,000 state and local taxes. And so the result of that is that a whole lot of folks who pay state taxes and pay local taxes are now being double taxed by the federal government on taxes that they already paid to their state and municipality to provide local services.
In 2017, President Trump and the Republican Congress passed tax reform, and they put in place a cap on one's ability to deduct their state and local taxes on their federal income tax returns at $10,000. And so in an area like mine, Rockland County, where I live, and Westchester County, where I represent, these are the two highest property tax counties in America. And so a majority of our homeowners are at or above the $10,000 in state and local taxes. It is obviously, it has a negative impact on constituents like mine.
The reason why this has been called a blue state tax is that the blue states are disproportionately affected by this. And it sort of makes sense if you think about it, because if you live in a state that has a robust social safety net, really good schools, spends money on local infrastructure, matches the federal Medicaid money, you probably live in a blue state, right? If a state is going to provide those services, it's also a state that's probably going to have higher state and local taxes. There's also a weird dynamic that because so many federal funding programs are designed not to provide equal benefit to all Americans, but are designed to provide equal benefit to all senators. I don't say that pejoratively. That's actually true. There are a lot of federal funding packages that are designed to get 51 senators, which means that small states like Wyoming get way more per capita than large states like New York and California.
At the end of the day, people shouldn't be penalized because they live in those high tax areas. And that's what the cap on SALT does. So it was the Republicans that put it in place. And interestingly, the Democrats had complete control of Washington for 2 years and did not repeal it, in part because members of their conference started to view it as, it's a tax on the rich. So it really, you're kind of like caught in the middle here between those who think we're subsidizing and those who think that, it's a tax on the rich.
It doesn't change the mortgage deduction. There are other issues there, but it doesn't necessarily affect that. What it does practically is just means that if you live in an area that has good schools and good infrastructure and good state services, and you pay for that, you now are sending more out of your pocket. Just in Illinois, there's, I think, 2 million folks in Illinois who are paying more in taxes than they were before this was passed.
Whether you're talking about the cost of construction or you're talking about the cost of living. And so having a cap on SALT does negatively impact the housing market. And right now, what we're dealing with on top of all that are high interest rates. And so when you have high interest rates, the cost of a mortgage goes up significantly. And so, generally speaking, home values will come down, which in the long run could have a positive impact on the market. But in the immediate, obviously, home values come down and, people are not as willing to get a mortgage. And so the market slows.
There's a small number of people who are paying huge taxes in places like, some of the wealthier parts of Nassau County, some of the wealthier parts of, places where you've got these huge homes and huge property tax. It's a small number of folks who are really driving a lot of the quote unquote revenue loss from this. So you could basically make this go away for 90% of the people and make it revenue neutral.
High cost states like New York have seen a mass exodus. And New York has led the nation in out-migration for about a decade. And the reason being that the cost of living. And so when you have this added tax, if you will, this added hardship, and you can't fully deduct your state and local taxes on your federal income tax return, that costs you thousands of dollars every year. And for a lot of people, that's thousands of dollars too much. And so you're seeing a lot of people go to Florida, go to North Carolina, go to Tennessee, go to Texas, where the tax climate is much more friendly. And so you're seeing, a major boom in housing in those areas. Whereas New York, there's still obviously development, there's still housing going on, but nowhere near at the levels in areas like we're seeing down south. And so a big part of that is the cost of living, and so SALT really does have a negative impact on that.
I'm in favor of killing the SALT cap. If all we can get is a deep injury to it, I'll accept that as a political compromise. We'll see if we get there. At this point, I think on fiscal matters, we're just hoping that the Republican leadership can find a way to avoid a debt crisis. If they can steer their way through that, then we'll get to a budget. If they can steer their way through that, then maybe we can get to the SALT cap. If you put a clean vote on the floor to get rid of it, I suspect we could probably get it passed.
New York sends more money to Washington than it receives. We get about 93 cents on the dollar back from Washington, D.C. Many of these states that have low taxes tend to get more subsidies from the federal government. It's striking a balance, and that's why I've introduced legislation that would lift the cap on SALT. I've introduced legislation that would double the cap for married couples from 10 to 20,000, because whether you're married or you're single, you're capped at 10, period. And so, we're trying to find ways to find an agreement and move forward and try to lift the cap in a reasonable, responsible way to help our taxpayers, while also obviously not blowing a hole in the federal deficit.